5 different kinds of human: Homo Habilis, Homo Erectus, Homo Floresiensis, Neanderthals, Denisovans. They looked up at the same moon, chased the same shadows, and dreamed the same fears. They were not ancestors. They were rivals. Their story is a silent war waged across continents, a slow, brutal competition for survival. One by one, their fires dimmed, their tools were buried, and their footprints faded into dust. The most terrifying truth is this: they were us, and they vanished. What dark, final moment erased all other branches of humanity, leaving only us behind? The story of humanity is not a single river but a vast, tangled delta. Our oldest kin, Homo Habilis, arose from the dust, the original artisans. Their hands, though crude, were the first to shape stone into purpose, a silent declaration that the world could be used, not just endured. They were the dawn, the first whisper of what we might become, struggling against an indifferent wilderness with little more than sharp edges and raw courage. Then came the restless voyager, Homo Erectus. They mastered fire, a miracle of warmth, protection, and cooked sustenance. With this new power, they looked beyond their birthplace. They were the first to truly leave Africa, pushing east, adapting to climates and territories no human had ever seen. They were resilient, their legacy spanning over 1 million years, a duration we have yet to match. They proved that humanity's destiny was movement, curiosity, and boundless adaptation. But the branches kept splitting. On a remote island, a world away from the main drama, lived the improbable Homo Floresiensis. They were the hobbits, tiny in stature, yet monumental in their survival. Trapped by rising seas, they evolved in isolation, their small frames a testament to the strange, unforgiving pressures of island life. They were a secret civilization, overlooked, yet perfectly adapted to their forgotten corner of the earth. The story intensifies with the giants of the icy north. The Neanderthals, massive and immensely powerful, were masters of a frozen world. They buried their dead with ceremony. They cared for the sick and the weak. They felt grief. They were intelligent, artistic, and utterly committed to their brutal environment. And alongside them, hidden deep in the caves of Asia, was the shadowy, almost mythical Denisovan. Known mostly from a finger bone and a jaw, they were a whisper in the paleontological record, a vast, unknown civilization whose genes still echo faintly within us. These 5 groups were not just historical footnotes. They were living, breathing peoples, each with their own unique version of a shared human existence. The stage was set for the ultimate drama, a world too small for all of them. The air was thick with tension, not of a sudden clash, but of a slow, creeping inevitability. The clock was ticking on 4 of these remarkable lines, and the quiet competition for the very soul of the planet was about to begin. The world was growing cold, not a sudden, dramatic freeze, but a slow, creeping chill that tightened the noose around existence. For Homo Erectus and Homo Habilis, the environmental shift was a quiet betrayal. Their long-held secrets for survival, the established migration routes, the reliable water sources, the seasonal hunts began to fail. The sprawling savannas that had nourished them for millennia turned fickle. Their simple, sturdy tools, perfect for a static world, became inadequate for a reality that demanded constant, rapid adaptation. Imagine the confusion. The fire that once guaranteed safety now seemed to consume scarce wood too quickly. The herds, once predictable, vanished like ghosts over the horizon. Habilis, with their foundational knowledge, were locked into patterns of thought and technique that had suddenly become chains. The struggle was not against a single predator, but against the sheer, overwhelming unfairness of a shifting climate that rewarded only the most fluid and inventive mind. They fought until their bodies were exhausted and their few resources spent. Their legacy ended not with a bang, but with a silent, spreading absence across the land they had pioneered. Their campfires, one by one, simply were not rekindled. The pressure intensified most dramatically on the margins, where the little people, Homo Floresiensis, clung to their volcanic island. The great climatic shifts were amplified by the ocean. Sea levels played a terrifying, capricious game, sometimes isolating them completely, sometimes connecting them briefly to the mainland, bringing fleeting hope or new, overwhelming competition. They had specialized, shrunk down to survive the limited resources. It was a beautiful, efficient adaptation, but it was also a fragility. When a new competitor arrived, perhaps a wave of resourceful Homo sapiens pushing through temporary land bridges, the balance was irrevocably broken. The hobbits' gentle, isolated existence turned into a hopeless siege. Their small stature, once their unique advantage, became their curse against those who brought not just new tools, but a wholly different kind of mind. Their story is a tragedy of isolation and inevitable absorption. A perfect world shattered by the arrival of the next great wave. But the real drama, the clash that echoes deepest in our own genes, was unfolding in the frozen heart of Eurasia. This was the territory of the Neanderthals and the elusive Denisovans. The Neanderthals were magnificent. They were the epitome of rugged survival, a people sculpted by ice and stone. They didn't just survive the cold, they owned it. Their thick bone, powerful muscles, and mastery of close-quarters hunting made them the alpha predator in their domain. Yet, their very specialization became their weakness. Their world was intensely localized. They were built for brute force, for the deep, narrow valleys of Europe. Then we arrived, not as an invading army, but as a creeping tide of change. Sapiens came carrying lighter tools and, crucially, lighter ways of thinking. We didn't just use fire, we told stories around it. We didn't just hunt mammoths. We planned the hunt across vast networks, using spears thrown from a distance, minimizing risk and conserving energy. Our power was not in the thickness of our bones, but in the thickness of our social webs. We shared information, innovated rapidly, and adapted not just to a specific environment, but to change itself. The tension between these two great powers, the Sapiens and the Neanderthal, was subtle, devastating, and relentless. It wasn't always a bloody confrontation. More often, it was an economic, emotional war of attrition. Where the Neanderthal used enormous energy to bring down one mighty bison, the Sapiens used teamwork and traps to net several smaller, more reliable prey. In lean times, this efficiency meant the difference between a thriving camp and a starving one. The competition was for the choicest caves, the richest hunting grounds, the best shelters against the howling wind. Each encounter was a psychological battle, the raw power of the Neanderthal meeting the cunning, abstract planning of the Sapiens. And amidst this conflict, the Denisovans were fading. They had intermingled with both Neanderthals and Sapiens, their genes a subtle, powerful ghost that lived on in others. But their distinct identity, their civilization, their unique way of life, it was being dissolved. They were absorbed, outcompete, or simply outmultiplied. The tragedy of the Denisovans is their silence. They were a massive, powerful branch of humanity that disappeared with barely a trace, a testament to the fact that even the vastness of Asia could not protect them from the final, inevitable push. The stage was set for the last act. The Neanderthals, pushed to the farthest, coldest edges of the continent, found their familiar world shrinking. Their incredible strength and unique adaptations were proving useless against the shifting puzzle of the Sapiens' mind. The absurdity of the situation, that the stronger, more physically capable human was losing the battle for survival, was the bitter core of their final, desperate struggle. They were magnificent, they were resilient, but they were running out of time. They knew they were alone. The final confrontation was not fought with spears and clubs, but with a more terrifying, invisible weapon: the power of imagination. How could one species compete with another that could invent solutions to problems it hadn't even encountered yet? The last great Neanderthal fires were burning down, and the cold was not just outside their caves, but deep within their own communities. They were boxed in. The rising action has reached its terrifying peak. What was the final, devastating move that extinguished the Neanderthal flame forever, leaving sapiens to inherit the entire Earth? The Great Cold was more than just ice. It was a psychological weapon. It squeezed the world, pushing the vast, sprawling territories of the Neanderthals into isolated pockets. They had retreated to the final strongholds, the deep caves and protected valleys of Europe's south and west. Here, they made their last, desperate stand. The conflict wasn't a single battle. It was a mosaic of 1,000 small, devastating defeats. Imagine the scene. A Neanderthal family, powerful, resolute, perfectly built for their freezing world, watches as the neighboring valley, their traditional winter ground, is now occupied, not by an enemy army, but by a handful of lean, long-limbed sapiens. The sapiens build a shelter out of lighter materials using less effort. Their fire burns longer, fueled by a more efficient knowledge of tinder and fuel. They don't just hunt the massive, dangerous mammoths. They fish the rivers, trap small game, and forage for plants the Neanderthals never bothered with. It was the absurdity of this imbalance that created the emotional core of the tragedy. The stronger species was starving in the shadow of the more flexible one. The shocking moment was not an act of overwhelming violence, but an act of overwhelming numbers and cooperation. The Neanderthals were small tribes, bound by deep, powerful kinship. When one was injured, the others sacrificed greatly to care for them, a profound act of humanity. But their groups were isolated, rarely exceeding a few dozen. This self-reliance became their undoing. When a harsh winter or a disease struck one community, there were no others to call upon. They faced extinction as islands, alone. The sapiens were different. They moved in wider networks. An innovative new tool, a better spear thrower, a needle for stitching warmer clothes, was not kept secret. It was shared across hundreds of miles. Their minds were wired for long-distance communication and collective memory. If one group failed, 50 others were ready to replenish the population, bringing not just bodies but fresh ideas. The sapiens didn't need to defeat the Neanderthals in a fair fight. They simply had to out-innovate, out-network, and outbreed them. The ultimate, brutal humiliation was watching their children slip away. The lack of varied nutrition, the immense energy demands of their powerful bodies in a depleted landscape, and the strain of constant, localized competition led to a slower birth rate and higher infant mortality. The Neanderthal mother, caring, grieving, and strong, watched her line diminish, while the sapiens' camps nearby echoed with the cries of robust, numerous children. The final collapse was an emotional one, a collective sorrow as they realized they were not just losing the land, but losing their future. The climax arrived in the Iberian Peninsula, the final refuge. Here, they held out for thousands of years after their kin had vanished from the rest of the continent. The caves became the last sanctuaries, the mountains the final barrier. Yet the air was changing. The tools of sapiens were everywhere. Better arrows, superior traps, and even art that captured the world with a haunting narrative clarity. The Neanderthal mind, focused on the immediate, tangible needs of survival, could not compete with a mind that could create symbols and stories, a mind that could think about the future far beyond the next season's hunt. The most intense part of this silent war was the genetic mixing. We see it in our DNA, the undeniable truth that the two species met, lived together, and sometimes created children. This was not always conquest. Sometimes it was coexistence. But the math of population was inescapable. The small, localized Neanderthal gene pool was flooded by the vast, spreading ocean of the sapiens. They weren't annihilated by a single plague or a great massacre. They were absorbed and dissolved. Their way of life, their distinct identity, was simply washed away by the sheer volume of their cousins. The last flicker of Neanderthal fire died approximately 40,000 years ago. It was not a sudden roar of tragedy, but a whisper. The very last individual, the final set of eyes that carried the full, unmixed legacy of 500,000 years of powerful, unique human existence, closed forever. Imagine that final moment. Standing alone in a cave mouth, looking out at a world now populated by beings who were almost them, but utterly different. There was no grand defiance, only silence. Their extinction was not a public humiliation. It was the ultimate, tragic loneliness. The shocking consequence: the world was now monochrome. For the first time in millions of years, only one kind of human walked the earth. We inherited a blank slate, but also the terrifying realization of our own fragility. What did our victory cost us? And what terrifying lessons did the dust of the extinct humans leave behind? The silence that followed the extinction of the last Neanderthal was immense. A quiet that settled over the Earth for the first time in 2 million years, signifying a terrifying, final monopoly. The entire planet belonged to one species. Our species, Homo sapiens, inherited the Earth, not through a great, decisive war, but through the quiet, relentless efficiency of communication, community, and abstract thought. The satisfying outcome of this biological consolidation was a cultural supernova, a staggering explosion of creativity now known as the Great Leap Forward. With the immediate existential pressure from a rival hominid gone, and with their flexible, networked minds fully unleashed, sapiens poured their excess energy into creation. The caves of Europe, once mere shelters, became canvases, vast, echoing halls filled with astonishing depictions of bison, horses, and the ghostly outlines of human hands. This wasn't just art. It was complex visual language, shared mythology, and the cementing of identity. The absence of the others allowed us to define ourselves completely, to build stories and gods where once there were only rivals and shadows. The ability to cooperate in large, flexible groups, a trait that defeated the smaller, more rigid Neanderthal social structures, now created the conditions for the first great civilizations. It allowed for specialization. Not everyone had to hunt. Some could paint, some could weave, some could focus solely on tool refinement. This social depth, this vast net of cooperation, was the ultimate legacy of our victory over our extinct cousins, ensuring that the Homo habilis' first tentative stone tool would one day evolve into a complex, global technological web. The long-term consequences of this single-species existence are profound, echoing through every aspect of modern life. The genetic ghost in the machine. The first and most intimate consequence lies within our own bodies. Our victory was not one of total erasure. The Neanderthals and Denisovans are gone, yet they are not entirely lost. They survive as genetic ghosts, faint but powerful echoes embedded in our modern DNA. When sapiens migrated out of Africa, they met, mingled, and interbred with the native Neanderthal populations in Europe and the Denisovans across Asia. Today, non-African populations typically carry between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. This legacy is not merely a curious footnote. It actively shapes who we are. Some of our thicker hair, our immune system's resilience to New World diseases, and even our propensity for certain disorders can be traced directly back to the robust, Ice Age-adapted genes of the Neanderthal. Even more striking is the Denisovan legacy. These mysterious people, known only through sparse bone fragments, left their mark on the modern inhabitants of Tibet. A specific Denisovan gene variant, acquired through ancient interbreeding, allows Tibetan highlanders to thrive in the low-oxygen environment of the plateau. This is the ultimate, bitter irony of extinction. The vanquished species provided the vital code required for the surviving species to conquer entirely new, harsh environments. They were not merely outcompete. They were absorbed. Their genetic traits were stripped away and integrated into the very fabric of the victor, ensuring their biological survival in a fragmented form. They are the silent partners in our success, providing the genetic cold-weather armor that made our final expansion across the globe possible. We carry their memory in our blood, a constant, visceral reminder that we were never alone. The weight of solitude. But the deepest consequence is philosophical, profound human loneliness. For millions of years, if a habilis looked up, they might see an Erectus. If a Neanderthal looked across a valley, they might see a Sapiens. Humanity was defined by its relationship to its other selves. There was a constant, living spectrum of consciousness, a range of minds and bodies that provided a mirror to our own identity. When the last of the others disappeared, we lost that mirror. We became an island of consciousness. Our victory separated us completely from the animal kingdom, because the gradual bridge of life, Erectus, Habilis, Floresiensis, was burned behind us. This sudden, acute solitude led to a psychological shift. The firm belief that we were unique, special, and fundamentally separate from nature. This belief system, this deep loneliness, fueled our ambition. It allowed us to feel justified in controlling the environment without fear of kin, without the psychological friction of another kind of human looking back. We began building the abstract systems of myth, religion, and nation-states that defined our future, complex, enormous structures designed perhaps to fill the void left by our lost brethren. The consequence is the world we inhabit, a world of extraordinary technological complexity, built upon a foundation of species isolation and the resulting sense of limitless entitlement. The powerful takeaway: the stories of Homo Habilis, Homo Erectus, Homo Floresiensis, Neanderthals, and Denisovans are not just ancient history. They are a chilling, essential lesson for us, the final sole survivors. The key to their downfall and to our success was not raw strength or intelligence, but the capacity for radical flexibility and unprecedented cooperation. The species that failed were those that specialized too well, that were locked into a brilliant yet brittle solution for a specific time and place. The species that survived was the one that embraced change and diversity of thought. We are now the only remaining branch of humanity, carrying the entirety of our species' future on our shoulders. The irony is that in achieving a global monopoly, we have become the next in line for the same pressures that eliminated all the others. We face a shrinking planet, vast global migrations, and a rapidly changing climate, the very forces that broke the spirits of Homo erectus and isolated the Homo floresiensis. We are building a future of incredible specialization, where the failure of one global supply chain can starve millions. We have placed all our eggs in one genetic, economic, and philosophical basket. We have become the ultimate specialist, the global networked human. The story of the extinct human species is not about a victory won long ago. It is a prophecy about ourselves. It reminds us that evolutionary dominance is fleeting and that the greatest threat to a species is often its own success. We defeated our cousins because they couldn't adapt quickly enough. But if the global climate or ecological systems turn hostile against us, who will be there to absorb our genes? Who will be the next, more flexible human to take our place? We look back at the fossils of the Neanderthal, strong, intelligent, utterly gone, and we see a terrifying mirror. They reached the end of their adaptation. We have only just begun to face the true consequence of being the last human standing. Is our celebrated, global, interconnected civilization the peak of human evolution, or simply the most specialized, and therefore the most fragile human branch yet?